Hi, my name's Tony Xu, Head of Product Development at Flippa, and today I'm joined by a panel of SEO experts about understanding the value of SEO when buying and selling businesses. With our panel today, I have Diana Richardson. Diana is a social media and community manager at SEMrush, a widely used platform for SEO, PPC, and keyword research. With over 15 years of experience, Diana has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to SEO, PPC, social, and email marketing. Next, I have Nick Ranger. Nick is a senior technical SEO specialist at Deja Marketing and the head of SEO Collective Australia. She's published 2 books, been a brand ambassador for Rank Ranger, and number 87 of the 202 top SEO experts. I'm also joined by Nick Brogden. Nick is the founder and SEO lead at Earn Media. He's a content optimization and offsite SEO specialist who has guest lectured on the topic of content marketing at the University of Technology. Finally, we have Mike Vanderheyden. Mike is a 17-year veteran of digital marketing and is a founder at Portal Ventures, a hybrid SEO consultancy specializing in helping online marketplaces generate more revenue through effective and scalable search engine optimization strategies. I'll start by saying that Flippa sees hundreds of listings each week, with buyers especially valuing direct and organic traffic. It also happens to be that direct and organic traffic is one of the more complex things to build, and the value of it is extremely high. I'd like to start off with the first question to Nick. What are the top ways in which SEO can increase the value of your website?
If I want to start off, I'm just going to keep it really nice and simple and maybe just do like a top 4 takeaways to remember here. Traffic, conversion rates, click-through rates, and reach. Focus on that with a trained eye. That has, I reckon, the most impact of value. First, go through your site and audit it for any technical mistakes or blocks. Like if there's no indexes, disallowed sections, broken links, like UX failures, duplication, you're pretty much going to build your empire in sand if you've got those. So I'm a technical SEO, so it's my favorite part. It's like solving puzzles. Second, I just want to make sure that all your data sources are filtered and tracking correctly. So set up your Google Search Console, set up Google Analytics. They're nice, they're free. Set up GA4. Set up GTM, Google Tag Manager. You can't hit a target when you're blindfolded, and really, without a goal, you really can't score. Third, content's growth. Split your topic into distinct paragraphs, use bullet points, boldings, headings, all the good principles of scalability and usability. Make sure that your content actually delivers on its promise. 4, reach. Once you posted your content to your site, people don't naturally come. You just need to go out and now push it. Now, this is a little bit more of like the tricky part sometimes, and there's a lot of different ways you could approach this. But if you answer the most important question with your content before even starting to write it, it's to make this part so much easier. And that question is like, what is the reason for this page to be linked to other pages? If you can reach out to other sites or content creators to share your brand and message, your content, or even collaborate with them, sometimes I'll run a paid ads campaign or build a community and push out those emails to an engaged audience. Thanks, SEO Collective. And SEO needs to look at all the other channels employing a sales marketing strategy in order to persuade Google's AI. Essentially, that this domain or brand is significant and it's something that has authority.
I mean, these are some really important factors. Nick Brogden, could you kind of expand on that and see how does that translate to revenue? How do you see that translating to revenue for businesses as they embark on that journey?
Pretty much backs on exactly what Nick was saying there. Sorry, I know we're both named Nick, so confusions for everyone. But what Nick was saying there about basically if you set things up correctly and if you're targeting your pages at the right type of keywords and you've got the traffic coming in, then theoretically that traffic should be highly commercial traffic. So of course, the number one simple way that you're going to get revenue is that traffic should come into your page. If your page is optimized correctly from a conversion standpoint, then that should convert to sales. If you're e-com leads, if that's what you're going for. So as long as you're targeting your keywords correctly, then the primary objective, of course, always is to get conversions. Now, that's not always the case because it can be hard to get someone to convert on a first hit to the site. So there's other revenue drivers as well. Of course, a really popular one is getting signups in your email lists. And then you can move that over to your nurture sequences, or however you're planning to use your email to target people. And of course, a really big one that a lot of people don't think of from an SEO standpoint is the importance, especially on larger websites, the importance that SEO plays in the paid channel side of things. If you're driving if you're driving a lot of really commercial and very direct intent-based traffic to your website, then you can create, of course, you can just straight remarket to those people. So if someone comes into your site, doesn't convert and leaves, you can keep chasing them around the web with your remarketing. But even more importantly is the retargeting. So you can actually build retargeting audiences off the people that enter into your site. And then you can actually sort of build your own data, with the help, of course, of Google and Facebook and whoever else you're advertising with, to actually then keep marketing and keep attracting people into the site from the lookalikes and expanding out on those audiences. So you can actually drive a huge amount of highly profitable, potentially, traffic that's going to drive the revenue through paid channels, which is based on organic. Actually, a friend of mine recently that works for a really large Australian company, they actually had an error and the organic traffic dropped, and they actually found out the organic traffic was down because the CPC rates went up. So that was, the conversion cost, whatever it was, I can't remember exactly. But so that's a really important metric as well. So it's sort of getting direct purchases from the traffic and, tons of other value around paid and also, data collection in general.
Diana, on the other side, I guess some of us have had the displeasure or the pleasure of seeing our SEO decrease over time and drop out of the rankings on the SEM rush. How does poor SEO, and I've seen that personally a few times, how does kind of poor SEO decrease the value of your website? And it'd be really interesting to get your views on that.
I'd like to say that's what we're there for, but it kind of makes it sound like a bad thing, but also kind of true.
Usually, I do get the smile when the top 3 rankings go up, but more often than not, it's the alert that comes in when you drop out of the top 10 that I guess gets the emails going.
Yeah, I still get a little flutter when I get the email notification that there's been a rank change for one of my projects or something, and I'm like, up or down, you just have to go and check it out. But I think. And both Nicks did a really great job of recapping the importance of SEO as a foundational element of your business. So I think nowadays, and Mark knows this too, because we've been doing this for so long, like SEO is now just seen as standard practice. So, if you show that you are not working on this element or you haven't thought about this element, then it could kind of put doubt into a potential buyer's mind as to what else are you ignoring, what else are you kind of half-assing, and that is not a great way to start that purchasing, interaction with a potential buyer. It's kind of like showing up to a job interview in your pajamas. Like, at least you're not coming in naked, but you really haven't thought this through yet. Your mind isn't, at the end goal. Your mind is in the moment, and at least I'm clothed or something, as opposed to how will this reflect on me, my company, my brand, and the way I do business in the future. As taking SEO, again, like a foundational element of as our world is today in marketing and doing business. If you're not even tackling the foundation, then you've got issues in the eyes of the potential buyer. Like, what else is going to pop up and not be 100% when I'm trying to purchase you, is what I would think of as a buyer.
Definitely. We see that a lot all the time in our due diligence. When people are purchasing websites and they see a drop in traffic, the first question in Google Analytics, the first question that comes in is, what happened?
You could also see it from the other perspective too. You could be looking for a potential project. So if their traffic is dropping, then that's an opportunity for you to kind of swoop in and be the hero. It just kind of, I think, depends on the goal of what you, the buyer, are trying to accomplish.
All right, next on to Mike. I want to cover a bit of the value of SEO when it comes to selling your business. And Diana and Nick Brogdon, Nick Ranger have given a really good overview of the value of SEO to the website. When it comes to selling your business, and Mike has been a part of quite a few marketplaces over the years, What do sellers need to focus on, Mike, in relation to SEO when preparing to sell?
I think the major thing, if I was looking to buy a business, the things that I would be looking for are definitely, is the supplier hiding anything, right? So the best thing you can do is be upfront about the history of the website. Has it been penalized in the past? Has it had any sort of hacks or malware involved with the business? From a buyer's perspective, we always ask what activities have been happening on the website. Have you had an agency involved? Have you had freelancers involved? Have they produced any reports that we can have a look at, dating back, a couple of months, 6 months, 12 months? But we also definitely look at how has the organic traffic grown, right? So you want to be able to showcase that there has been a steady increase or decrease in organic traffic, and be able to answer any questions as to why, but also not looking at the history of the website and not looking at why there was a sudden spike or a sudden decrease. I think making sure that you're prepared for those types of conversations will instill a lot of confidence in the buyer as well. So I think it's just make sure that you've got your ducks in a row, be able to answer any questions that you might have depending on traffic increases, traffic decreases, and essentially the history of the website. Those are the key things that I usually look for when I first look at buying a business.
To Nick Ranger there, what are kind of the SEO factors that can help drive buyer interest?
I think to answer that question, I think about when I've just been scrolling around Flippa, wanting to buy a site for myself. A lot of the time, people, myself, scrolling through long lists of sites have a very set idea in their head of what they're after. From my experience, I look for price, I look for profit margin and proof of life, which is going through and actually just going through and making sure that all the stats and figures and things like that they've declared there are real. So I'll use SEMrush, I'll use Ahrefs, I'll use Majestic, and I'll go through and have a little bit of a forensic investigation with my short list. And then I do all of that even before I've decided to do anything beyond that. As far as things that SEOs drive buyer interest, I mean, oh my golly. When I think about the kinds of sites that I've got or that have been really successful, I feel like it's still true that affiliate websites that are in evergreen niches that don't require constant content updates are a really good place to start. And by evergreen, I mean doesn't rely on seasonal trends or gimmicks to attract their customers, because it sells products or services that people inherently already want or need. The same thing applies to websites that earn from ads. If you compare the two, websites monetized with ads sell quicker than ones that make money through affiliate programs. Keep that in mind. Affiliate marketing doesn't necessarily work for all pages, because they'll work for certain ones, you're selling products usually. But AdSense works for all pages, which is why it's a lot of the backbone for a lot of blogger sites. And personally, I've actually got a lot more experience using AdSense than I do affiliate. At the end of the day, if a site's done right and is making money, it will always sell. How much it sells for depends on how well it's being built. So again, fix up your technical stuff, your content, your overall strategy on how you're pushing that. And like Nick was saying, Nick Bogdan was saying, I think the modern day SEO really needs to look at not just the organic channel, but all other channels, because really you're focusing on the audience at the end of the day. You're focusing on who that website is for. And if you can really understand understand the rules that dictate that, you're going to flip it.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'll share an anecdote particularly on the sale price, and I'll let Nick take it from there afterwards on how SEO can impact the sale price. I've been involved in directory businesses and marketplace businesses, for the better part of a decade, and one of the most interesting ones was Yellow Pages, which was sold for about $250 million to a US-based private equity. It went from a private equity fund to a US-based corporate. And one of the things that they valued most was actually being able to buy the organic ranking #1 in the plumbers, electricians, builders and all the home building verticals. That is an extraordinarily complex and difficult area to kind of gain the #1 ranking for in home services, legal services, accounting services, and having hundreds of pages or thousands of pages, which were not just ranking #1, but ranking in plumbers near me, increased the value of that directory significantly. And this is still Yellow Pages we're talking about. I mean, Yellow Pages was dead for all want of a term, right? Many decades ago, but still an extremely valuable asset given its position on #1 SERP in a huge amount of categories. And I'll pass it over to Nick there on some of the other factors which you've seen, at least from SEO, that have really impacted the sale price.
Yeah, totally. And actually, I just definitely second what you're saying there about Yellow Pages, because I've used that as an example before where people, I mentioned Yellow Pages and people, is that still a thing? Was often what people would say. And I'd be like, when you Google, and you could say 50,000 things to Google and they're in the top 3 positions. And I was like, this has got massive value because of these rankings. But then talking about increasing a sale price, the interesting part about that is where people were saying, is Yellow Pages still a thing? They were probably using it and not even hardly realizing, because it didn't really matter if it was Yellow Pages. It just mattered who ranked in the top 3 or who was visible and who had the best SERP conversion optimization, to get the clicks. So pretty much you can increase value of your site because you can go and compete with a site like Yellow Pages that sold for, how much was it, $200 and odd million? Pretty heavily. Well, I'm assuming their database was worth a fair bit too, but the SEO wouldn't have hurt. But so you can actually build your own sites and actually grab rankings and compete with major corporations through SEO. Then when you're selling your website, pretty much an easy way to increase the value is it's the top level simple way is just to say to someone, Google this and you'll see me there. Like if you're in a fintech or something and you say Google this and you're ranking next to major banks and huge home, big well-known brands, you can say, well, there's the value there. I've got traffic. So #1, that whoever's looking at your website, whatever other sites they're looking at, you've suddenly just probably increased what you can ask for on your site instantly by just that easy by saying that. Of course, getting the ranking is definitely not that easy, but if you have it. The other ways to increase value increase the sale price would, I guess, be what else? Well, sort of working out traffic value is the way I like to do it, where you could actually say, all right, we'll say my site gets 1,000, whatever site we're selling has 1,000 organic hits per month from, that are ex-commercial queries. The average value of the cost per click is, say, $3. I'm just using simple numbers here for ease of my math. So say it's 1,000 at $3. So you've got $3,000 value to your site per month. And then just on a really simple equation, you can say, okay, so 3 times 12, so you've got 36,000. Then you can put whatever multiple you want on the sale price. Even if you put a 3x, you're talking over $100,000. So that's just the value of that organic traffic. So then whatever else the business has, you can then stack 100,000 on top of that straight away. But then on top of that, you could also look at growth of additional keywords coming up. So you could say, all right, well, look, that's what we're getting now, but we've got another 100,000 keywords ranking on page 2. So, and you can show a trajectory and then sort of add value for the growth that's going to come in the next couple of years. Obviously, you can't get as much money for that because it doesn't exist yet, but it's still additional value you can add in for future growth that's already pending. And if there's a good SEO strategy in place that you're handing over with the business, then that has a lot of value because you can say, continued with this SEO strategy, here's the growth for the last year. So we predict that it'll be X, and then you can add value on that way as well. So that's probably one of the better ways to do it is by just, if you compare it back to a real world, like something you can say, here's an actual value. This is what Google valued this traffic at. So then you can easily add a value that people can't argue with because that's fact. If you want the traffic, that's what it costs to buy it from Google. And then, of course, buying it from Google, you've got to compete with everybody else and so on and so forth. The other way, I guess, would be just, a simple way would be looking at the conversion tracking. If you've got, if you've got your GA set up properly and you can actually prove value from the organic traffic, you might only be getting 300 organic clicks a month, but if that's converting at 20 grand for whatever sales it is, then that's worth a ton of cash. So it doesn't matter what the CPC rate is, because you're proving that this organic traffic has that value. So that's why I think Nick mentioned earlier, like setting up your tracking is just super important for, obviously for, of course, so you know what you're doing and you know, you can see where you're going, but also to prove what you've got. So people can't argue with third-party data, right? Like you can't make that up. So it's something you can easily use from a sales perspective, because people can't argue with it.
Excellent. And to your point, it's not just the traffic too. As Nick said, a well set up affiliate program will also make multiples on top of that income that you're making from the content. The other part that is really actually anecdotally was really interesting is, you know, we've found that at Flippa, we've done a huge amount of work to get on SERP #1. So we're on SERP #1 for buy an app above Apple. We're on SERP #3 for buy a Shopify site, right? You know, and #1 and #2 are obviously Shopify. And, you know, we're on #1 for buy a SaaS business and buy an online business. And those are really important things, because every time someone wants to list with us, you know, it's a pretty simple equation. We ask them to just Google us, and we are #1, and they can visually see, and it's so powerful when you can visually see that you're going to be listed on the #1 directory there, the #1 marketplace there with the highest rank. So from our end, it's been, you know, hugely valuable, and it obviously impacts the sale price of the listings on Flippa. They get more traffic, they get a lot more buyers on there. I want to move over to some of the factors that I guess our buyers need to be aware of when they go and purchase an asset. And in terms of third-party tools, there's nothing more comprehensive than, I guess, SEMrush. And Diana from SEMrush is a perfect person to ask this particular question to. You know, what's the first thing that buyers need to do when they assess buying a website? And I think I'll give you a bit of a spoiler alert. Some of it includes checking out SEMrush, doesn't it, Diana?
Of course. And Nick Ranger actually did an awesome job of, you know, outlining what that process looked like, including using assets like SEMrush and, you know, other tools. Evaluate the site before you even consider purchasing this website. It's really important to do that background and that homework before you even launch into the next phase of consideration. But just like a marketing strategy, I think it's important for the purchaser to really define their goal. Why are you purchasing this website? It's more than just buying a URL. So are you acquiring an entire new business? And I say that because the first thing you'll want to assess is whether the newly purchased website is even worth like keeping as a separate entity, or would it benefit your business more to redirect the URL? So, you know, it depends on your overall goals. I worked for an umbrella company at the very beginning of my career, and when we made acquisitions, we did both. So some turned into a new sector of our overall business, and sometimes we acquired the competition. You know, and there are cases where redirecting the URL could do more harm than good. Again, using your tools to understand, and you know, it was mentioned earlier too, being upfront and transparent about your website if it had been penalized in any way, if there's been any actions taken on that site, and how many people have been involved in working on your site are all really important things to know when you're deciding whether to, you know, incorporate this website into your quality business. So establishing that information is going to be super important as one of the first steps before you move along in this process.
And that leads on to you know, the due diligence part, which Mike is kind of familiar with. Mike, what kind of due diligence should buyers focus on, and what are some of the red flags they should look out for when they're buying a site?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's quite a number, but I'll start with the simple ones. And this is notorious throughout selling websites. It's people will post up pretty revenue numbers or profit numbers, and then not disclose that this was actually achieved through paid acquisition. So when I look at a listing on, say, Flippa, and I see good multiples, I straight away scroll down and go, what's the, SEMrush's domain authority for this website? Because there's a correlation that if someone's doing, $10,000 a month, but the domain authority is 2, that in my head tells me that's a paid acquisition platform, right? Whether that's e-commerce, whether that's affiliate marketing. So the very first thing that I do is I actually pop the URL into SEMrush and I go, okay, what's the overall authority of the website? The domain authority is sort of a score of 0 to 100 that they've come up with based on backlinks, based on content, how many websites are linking to you. And if you're buying a website, you want to have if you're buying an established website, you'd like to see some authority, right? So you'd expect something in the 30, 40, 50, 60 range if it's a decent business. Is definitely these resurrected websites. So someone might have let a domain expire, and then I pop it into SEMrush and you'll see a flat line. And then in the last 6 months, you'll see this big spike go up in traffic, which leads me to believe, hey, this is someone's had an expired domain, they've dumped a bunch of content on there and Google has found it, so it makes the graph look pretty, right? Those are definitely some red signs that you go, hey, how long have you had this site for? When was the first content posted versus the last content posted? You want to make sure that the metrics check out if it's an e-commerce site. If it's an affiliate site, you want to kind of get the history of the affiliate, because if it's a resurrected website, they typically don't have more than 6, maybe 12 months worth of data, which is a red flag. And the last thing that I definitely do look for is has it been spammed? Is it quality content? Is it spun content? What's the quality like? Is it written by someone that knows what they're talking about, or is it written by someone with a moniker or a ghost name or ghostwriter? And then ultimately you want to tie those together in sort of a little matrix, make your own little risk matrix and go, okay, well, this is just obvious junk versus, hey, this has really got potential.
I think what we might move forward to is the SEO versus paid marketing debate, which is one that's always, I guess, close to home, because it's a longer term investment versus short term. And one personally where, advocating for the SEO path for myself has been very difficult for the first 3 months and much easier afterwards. Whereas advocating for the PPC path has been much easier in the first 3 months, much more difficult after 6 or 12. And I guess Nick Ranger, the first question goes to you. What should sellers focus on or invest in when wanting to exit? In terms of the SEO investment, what should they focus the SEO investment on if they were to exit in a 1-year time frame, a 2-year time frame, or a 5-year time frame?
Yeah, just to pick up on what Mike was just talking about and Diane was talking about before, like when you're doing your assessments or your risk matrix, I love that. I'm going to use that. I hope that's right, Mike.
Yeah, of course.
What you're doing is kind of like, assessing in your mind, how much work there is involved to really just take this site, to take the original niche and build it out in the way that that's going to be successful. So I think like when looking at like the SEO versus the PPC stuff, like, look, I don't really have that down to an exact science, because PPC for me is a little bit more utilitarian. I use it in a way to understand the rules, like what is influencing the increase of the click-through rate for these pages. So I've got pages that I want to do like an A/B test with, like, I'll write my article or I'll have the existing article that I think that is pretty good. Like, it's getting some reasonable traffic. It's got a couple of clicks on these keywords, but I don't really know what's kind of like the thing about this that is actually working. So I'll research an array of keywords, and these are the ones I wanted to test, ones that will hopefully have like that user interact a lot more positively with it. And if I do get like a nice little short list from my paid campaigns, then I'll go through and I'll test on organic. Because again, I think one of the things that we haven't really kind of said is like, yes, we're massive focus on SEO, and be aware of all the other channels, because I think it's really important that an SEO is a lot more like a digital marketing, especially now. but it's because like organic channels are the cheapest ones to run because you're building upon your assets. It's building your castle on a very solid platform, the technical platform. And this is why I think like, it's really a good thing to keep in mind. But doing that in that way, the only caveat is that behavior between organic and AdWords is different, slightly different, not by a lot, but it is different. So it's just a really good quick hypothesis to be able to do your testing and roll things out in organic, but the testing must continue in the organic results as well. And I think over time, as you're going through doing that at the 1 year, 2 year, maybe even the 10-year mark, you're going to really start to hone in on what works. Focus on, all right, I'm not going to like attack with volume, I'm going to attack it with quality. But those things will pay in dividends in the long run. If you're using PPC, you're going to be doing some really great short-term work, but it's really transparent. Anyone like, all these incredible people on the panel here today are telling you right now, we can detect that pretty easily. So again, the longer road is always the better road to take, but it's the one that you will really thank yourself, especially 10 years down the track, because then you'll have sites that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars rather than chump change.
Thank you for that, Nick. And one of the other parts, I guess, what we're seeing quite importantly is that as the CPCs start to grow, particularly in e-commerce, where Amazon's making it more expensive. Obviously, Google is incredibly expensive compared to where it was pre-pandemic, and Facebook a lot more expensive than it was pre-iOS changes and pre-pandemic as well. The PPC road is starting to get quite expensive, and it's certainly. I'm from an e-commerce site previously from Catch Group, and even just in the last 2 years, we've seen double-digit, if not in certain categories, particularly beauty and some really nice high-margin categories. Actually, especially the high-margin categories, we've seen PPC go up, northwards of double, triple digits in those areas. And so I guess that gets me onto the unit economics of paid search, which is a question for Mike. What are the economics of paid search, and how can it impact a sale for a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just following on from Nick, obviously, I'm not considering the SEO benefits that can be gleaned from running a paid search campaign, right? So we're purely looking at it from a standalone perspective. So if I'm looking at a business using PPC as a supplemental way of gaining traffic, obviously SEO is our bread and butter, right? It's the sweet spot. But what we're seeing a lot of lately is, and especially the COVID pandemic sort of period, a lot of people had a lot of free time. They started setting up their own little Shopify stores, for example, and thinking, great, I'll just run a bunch of Google ads and I'm going to have a super successful store. When in actual fact, what tends to happen is 6 or 12 months down the line, they hadn't considered your cost per acquisition when you're running an e-commerce store. And so a lot of these stores are now up for sale. They have very little SEO value, and the unit economics of acquiring a customer versus what the customer is actually spending doesn't add up, right? So with SEO, because you're already getting that traffic, it's kind of harder to measure the cost per acquisition. But if you can get your paid search and prove that the unit economics work, which means you can acquire a customer via your paid channels cheaper than what they're actually spending. So like you said, the high value items, high ticket items, luxury fashion, if you're looking at average order values of $700-800 and you can acquire that customer for $100, now you've not just got your SEO, but you've actually got a scalable channel that you can bolt on top to sort of multiply it to a certain degree. But also keeping in mind that if that's what you're basing your sales pitch on when selling your website, consider the forecast of that 10, 20, 100, whatever it is, multiple increase in CPC, because at some point CPC is just going to become unviable, and then it's it's a race to the bottom, right? It's not a competitive moat to have an AdWords campaign running or a Facebook campaign running, because if you and I start websites today, starting from complete blank slate, I can just outspend you, I can outbid you, and so there's really no competitive moat. So once you've got the SEO sorted, PPC can be an accelerator for your brand, but just be aware that the unit economics work out. And before you start a site, make sure that you've thought through the unit economics of any e-commerce business that you're starting, because otherwise you'll be flipping it in 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Could I just add on something on that? Because what Mike was saying, I relate to so closely. And what I found is that, like, where you're saying, like, somebody can come in, if they've got more money than you, they can come and just compete on a paid level and sort of knock you out of the game. But if your SEO game is really strong, and if you're driving tons and tons of organic traffic, they actually can't. They can slow you down a lot, but you'll end up probably bleeding them dry, because you'll be getting so much free traffic, and they'll be having to pay so much money for the traffic. So actually, that's one of the most important parts, especially in large e-com, of having a really, really strong organic play and driving majority of your sales through organic, hopefully, would be a goal. Then people can't just come in with a ton of cash and just knock you out.
I mean, a lot of people bid on the Flippa name brand on Google Ads now. It must be horrendously expensive for them per click at the moment.
That's actually how I gauge how difficult, because we have difficulty metrics in SEO, but I actually stopped using those a while ago, and I just base it on traffic volume plus CPC rate. And then the higher the CPC rate, the higher the actual value of that search term is the way I gauge how competitive it will be.
Finally, end off on a bit of a round robin, I guess. We'll go around the room on some of the strategies that can improve your website's ranking before selling. And maybe I'll go around the room and I'll ask you each to nominate one strategy that you would implement to improve a website's rank before selling. And maybe I'll start off with Diana.
UX testing, make it for your customers, make it interesting so that when potential buyers are looking at it, they're like, this site's cool, I like it, just like your customers would. So focus on that.
Thanks. Nick Brompton?
I have to answer with the standard SEO answer. Would of course straight away it would be it depends, right? Because it depends on what the low-hanging fruit is. There's no one answer.
Did we really get to the end of this with only the one it depends?
I had to say, well, because that one absolutely.
That sounds like a management consultant, mate.
Yeah, and with that I'm hanging up. No. If I had to pick one, it would be going for a high volume, highly competitive query that I could attack with a blog post. Review the SERP, see who's ranking, create something as good or hopefully better than whatever's there, unless you compete with HubSpot or something where it's near impossible. So as good, and then put that live, do a lot of offsite PR and build links and whatnot, high quality, of course, white hat offsite SEO, get that to rank. That gives you additional traffic. The authority from that would increase the general ranking of the whole site, so you can show some fast growth at the end. And also, if you can get up there and rank with some of the higher competitors there, of course, that's helpful from what we were talking about earlier, where you can say, give it a Google and you get credibility.
Excellent. Nick Ranger.
Awesome. I'm probably going to go back to what I said at the very start: traffic, conversion rates, click-through rate, and reach. That being said, like, I would like to maybe just add a little note that I feel like affiliate marketing is a lot more easier than profitable than getting into AdSense. I've done the AdSense game, but affiliate marketing is pretty awesome, and especially like Amazon affiliate. I know that there's been changes to like cutting of commissions, but I feel like people really seem to value the simplicity of using Amazon affiliates. And I feel like from a buying standpoint, like those are the ones that always sell a lot better. Find your little gap and then just be like, I am this tiny little gap, but I'm going to be everything about this tiny little gap.
I think Mike.
Nick just touched on that right at the end. If I had one strategy to deploy for a brand new website, it'll be topical authority. I would want to be finding out all the topics that are that my market are talking about, all the questions that my market are talking about, and I'm going to single-handedly answer every single query and blanket coverage a particular niche topic. That alone in itself, we have tested, will generate traffic. But then if I was to accelerate it, like Nick Brogden was telling or sharing, is offsite strategies of attaining links to that content, because you're now seen as the authority in that field because you've answered so many questions, to accelerate it even further. But yeah, if I boil it down to one, it's blanket coverage, everything in a particular niche market.
We're at the end of our questions, and it's been an absolutely fantastic panel discussion with you all. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I've had great fun talking through the world of for SEO land with all of you.
Cool.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Legend.